Hi, everyone. Welcome to FaithIQ, the podcast. We're very blessed. We have our first in-studio guest. We have Dan Cassidy, who lives in California, right? Very Northern California.
Northern California,
What
Southern
part?
Oregon. Well, it's actually Southern Oregon, but it's a few miles from the border.
Okay.
Ashland.
And did you fly in or did you drive in?
I drove in 3 days. Took me longer
3
than
days.
I thought. Yeah.
So my Arnie Fonseca, we're doing a shout out for you who lives in North Phoenix that wouldn't come down to Gilbert. You're getting a free plug here, my friend, but it's not going to be free much longer. I mean, Dan Cassidy, who you're a physical therapist and you've worked with a lot of Major League Baseball teams, right? Minor league teams
Two in
as well?
particular.
What two teams?
San Diego Padres and the Oakland A's.
Well, I have a San Diego Padres connection. I can't give the exact name out, but you'll figure it out. Back in 2010, I was given an opportunity to sell someone's minority stake, a voting minority stake in a Major League Baseball franchise, because he had to get rid of that. It was within the same division because he wanted to buy the San Diego Padres. And then he got turned down by the owners, which I guess they can do that. They vote on new owners. And because this person used to be a baseball agent,
okay,
which agents are in the news all the time now because especially beating up on, I don't know, beating up, but negotiating with baseball owners on contracts, sometimes they don't like to want them to be a fellow owner. So it's back in 2010, we had 13 days to find a buyer. And thankfully, Rob Yao, a friend of mine, knew someone that would represent potential owners. And we were able to get 3 people to the table within those 13 days.
Was it the Seidlers?
No, this was a major league.
The Dodgers.
This was a major league franchise.
Right. Well, the Seidlers were part of the Dodgers at one time.
This was a major league franchise to buy the selling his share in a major league franchise where he was a general manager at one point, and to buy the majority share of the San Diego Padres.
Okay. And that was back in 2010.
2010, and there's a movie called Jerry Maguire, which a person was a consultant. So you'll figure it out who it is now, and we'll leave it out that because I don't want to be exposed on podcasts of breaking NDAs. So anyhow, back to you. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in suburbs of Chicago.
Okay.
Simple.
What part?
South Holland. It was just a blue collar area. Simple. We grew up just playing baseball every day. It was our passion. But we played all the sports, depending on the season, hockey in the winter, football in the fall, mixed in a little basketball. But baseball was the passion. It's kind of like New York City, where everyone did it, in the summer. And, back in those days, there was no cell phones, right? So you spread the word around the neighborhood. We had a game going within an hour or two in the churchyard,
I love it.
The community. And the dads were the coaches.
That's something missing these days, yes. I think. Community is so important, isn't it?
Oh, totally. And I was talking to my friend who still lives in Chicago. He was a coach at a Catholic high school there for a long time, one of the more successful coaches in Chicago. And he's at St. Rita High School, which is a dangerous neighborhood for him. But he, was there for a long time. The field's named after him now. And I said, Mike, do kids still play in the park like we used to, in our neighborhoods? He said, not at all.
Wow.
It's the cell phones. They're buried in the cell phones.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I moved out here from Baltimore. Baltimore is very much a neighborhood community too. It's like Chicago. And my father was a white collar worker. He worked for defense contractors, worked for Black & Decker at some point. Okay. He finished up his career working for the county, like a county inspector. My mother worked for the telephone company, local telephone company, all her career. She was like an executive assistant, but when we were born, she went to work the night shift so she could be with us during the day doing key punch. So what did your parents do?
What do you mean key punch?
Key punch, like back before computers, the first computers. Yeah, key punch was like where they processed information.
Okay.
The telephone company, because of all the data and stuff, that was like one of the first computer stuff. But literally, imagine a parent working night shift. A lot of parents do these days. I get upset when people, I have 2 interns that work for us in my business. And I was telling someone who's a donor actually to ASU that it's a tough job market. And his first response was, I see jobs all the time advertised, $17 an hour, $25 an hour. That's not a living wage.
No, depending on where you're at, but definitely not here.
No. Yeah. But back to you, what did your parents do?
Well, my father was World War II in the
Oh, wow.
Navy, and all my uncles were too in the World War II. So um, they became tradesmen after
Yeah.
that. They didn't have an opportunity to go to college. They got out of the war when they were in their mid 20s. My dad was a pressman for the Chicago Sun-Times.
Oh, wow.
Went to trade school for that. I think he had a little bit of college, like junior college, but already has started a family and that. So you just limit yourself, right?
Yeah.
If that's too soon. But my mother didn't work till I was in sixth grade. She was a librarian. She raised 5 kids, and
So Catholic family?
yeah. Well, my father was Catholic, Irish. My mother was Protestant until she married, and then she studied the Catholic faith and became a convert.
Opposite for me. My mother
That's
was
strange.
Catholic. I never really understood why. We never really talked about that. We'd go to church every Sunday. I think I told you this. I was an altar boy, Episcopalian church.
Episcopalian.
It
Yeah.
wasn't that until I went through a divorce, a couple years later, I was remarried and I found out my father was married before. And that's why he wasn't, that's, I think he was Episcopalian anyway, but that's why they got, raised as Episcopalian. And it's kind of an odd thing to keep from your children, but my father wasn't a big communicator, obviously. Um, brother, where do you fit in the rank in terms of brothers and sisters?
I am last at
You're the
61 years
baby.
old. Yeah.
You're 61.
I'm
You
61.
don't look 61.
Well, the hair
Well,
tickles it
yeah,
away, right?
that's that part. I'll take credit for. This
I'd
is
like to have a little
all
bit of what you
mine.
got.
I may be over 60, so I don't want that out there too much. But anyhow, yeah, back to you. So you grew up in Chicago. Did you go to college?
Well, in high school, okay, my passion was baseball. So it's all we could ever think about. My friend that I mentioned to you that coached on the south side of Chicago, um, he got a scholarship to St. Xavier, and I had to go to junior college. And
Okay.
the reason being was, you know, on all the little league teams and all the Babe Ruth teams, we called them back then in high school, every team I was on a championship team. So we learned to win.
Wow.
I mean,
What
every
position
team.
did you play?
Well, when I was in little league, I wanted to be a catcher because I was a goalie in high school,
Wow.
goalie in like amateur leagues growing up, and I just thought it was cool. So I was a catcher in little league, and I was a shrimp. But the coach would say he's tough and he can block the balls and all of that, right? So I learned to do that, and then when I got to high school, they put me as a middle infielder, mostly second base, but
That's the
I was
best
always
position.
underdeveloped compared to the other kids, right? I was behind. I was
Yeah.
like 5'2" as a freshman and 125, I think. But anyway, maybe 98 pounds at that. But
Oh, wow.
um, we had a first round draft choice for the California Angels. They call them the California Angels back there. Our shortstop was the
Really?
number one pick
What
for
was
the
his name?
California Angels,
What's
Mark
his name?
Dorn.
Okay. That's so
And then
cool.
we had another guy in the league that his name was PJ Schranz. I ended up playing with him in college. He was the number one pick out of Chicago besides Mark Dorn, and he went to Southern Illinois University. I remember watching him, how good he was at Bloom High School. And I remember, not thinking ahead too much because I kind of thought my career was over. I didn't start because the
Yeah.
shortstop was, phenomenal. And he was the quarterback on the football team.
Oh,
And then
wow.
one day a coach from the sophomore team came into my auto mechanics class and he said, Cassidy, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to the local junior college. He goes, I'm going to be the baseball coach there. I'm going to give you a scholarship. He goes, you could have played anywhere in the conference if Dorn wasn't in front of you.
Oh, wow.
So he launched my career basically. That one coach, I always tell people, it's one coach that believes in you and gives you a shot.
That's all you need. That's all you need in life. You
Yeah.
need someone, just one.
One person.
Yeah, I'm getting emotional here. No, seriously, a girl that's very special to me. I think, everyone needs one person that believes in them.
Yeah.
And, we've all been through stuff. And again, God is the most important thing, at least in my life. But at the end of the day, you need someone here on earth
Yes.
that believes in you, that supports you. That I have a great life coach. I have Jimmy Walker, a guy's done a lot of stuff. But I don't reach out to him that much. I really don't. My youngest son, David, and I try not to unload on him too much because, literally it's, he has his own life. He's married and has a beautiful wife and everything. And then I have my friend Doug Herschel, who's from Montana, and Doug is as salt of the earth as you get. Doug will, I texted a few people when I was on my way to see an ex-girlfriend to help her move. And I get the text back from Doug immediately. What are you doing? And, it's good to have friends that are grounded, but I think it's important to have friends that believe. And at the end of the day, some can be stronger friends than others. And even some of your best friends can be ones you don't take any of their advice. And they may get frustrated with you, right? But at the end of the day, you have to follow what you want to do, right? So I'm going to fast forward in a few minutes to what you're doing now. But I do want to touch upon your baseball career because you played in the minor leagues, correct?
For a very short time.
I
But
don't care if it was 5 minutes. You
yeah,
got this
yeah.
opportunity. Where was it and when?
Well, how about if I just back up just a little bit so you know
Sure.
the path? Okay, so that coach who believed in me, he wasn't probably the greatest baseball coach in the world. He was a motivator. And he knew he was the wrestling coach. Back then, I always tell people, these kids that I coached at Poway High School in San Diego, they had everything. Everyone had been in the major leagues or minor leagues that coached them. My high school coach was our driver's ed instructor.
I love it.
So he didn't know that much about baseball. So you don't know any different though at that time. When you get to California, you're like, God, they have the opportunity or lifetime. Anyway, so from there, I was discovered by someone that played at Southern Illinois University.
Okay.
And he came up to me after a game and he said, I'm going to put your name in at SIU. Right. I was like, really? That's like I got from not even starting to all of a sudden, Southern Illinois University at that time was the premier program in the Midwest.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they had 2 College World Series runner-ups to
Get
USC.
out of here. Wow.
68, 71. Then they were in 2 more World Series after that in the 70s. If you had any kind of good talent from Chicago, that would have been your top choice. That program was primo. My brother was there as a student, and he used to go to the games, and he'd tell me, as I was getting better, he goes, why don't you try to walk on at Southern Illinois and, come down for a game, whatnot. But anyway, it was still just a dream. So my sophomore year, I had a little in, so I decided to go there. And you're going to probably laugh at this because I shared this story with Jim Lefevre, the rookie of the year in 65 with the Dodgers, and he was rolling. So I got there and they were practicing, and I yelled out to the third base guy, which, wasn't that far from the field. I said, hey, do you think you could tell Coach Jones Dan Cassidy's here? I was kind of like Rudy Rudiker in the movie, right? No,
I love it.
I
love that movie,
Rudy,
too.
right?
Yeah.
So he said, sure, and I tell him Bob Kaufman recommended me. That was a pitcher for he had played. So the next day I went back out there and I just jumped the fence and went over to shortstop while they were working out.
That's the way to do it.
And he said,
just show up. Seriously, listeners, viewers, whatever you guys are. I know that I think there's 10 subscribers right now. So hopefully we've got a few more, but showing up is half the battle. I've been in places before. I've showed up. Next thing you know, you're on some task force to keep the Cardinals on tag. Just go to the meeting. Don't ask for permission. Just do it, right? So that's good for you. The
coach called me over and he goes, who are you? And I said, well, Bob Kaufman recommended me, and your third baseman told me it was okay to come out here.
I love
it. So we started a conversation, and he said, where have you been? And I said, well, Bob discovered me, and I just decided to come down here and try to walk on. And he said, well, we got a tryout coming up. I don't remember all the details of that because it's so long ago now, but he had his eye on me from the start because I was unusual, right? I had the desire. And I remember him saying, where's the kid with the quick hands and feet? And that's what I was known for then after that. But he said, listen, one of my players coaches at the local junior college. He didn't quite think I was that caliber to make that team yet.
Right.
But he said, he's going to give you a scholarship. And I didn't know he was going to keep his eye on me.
Yeah.
I learned that after the season. So I went to this local junior college close to Southern Illinois. That coach I just saw him a few months ago and I thanked him. I go, you were the instrument in my career that got me going. So he taught me how to play infield. And then I had Kentucky after me, Murray State and Western Kentucky. And I was thinking about the University of Kentucky because Keith Madison was a really good coach at that time, and it was a top program in the SEC. And so I told Coach Monfort, I said, but I really want to go to SIU. And he goes, well, I didn't tell you, but you wanted you back.
Nice.
But I didn't have a scholarship, right? Because he was, I played with Steve Finley.
Oh,
who was
wow.
the Diamondback center fielder. But the year before that, Robert Jones was on our team. He was the top draft choice out of Chicago. He was number one pick of the Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah, I need to interject here because I don't know baseball. I told you, Dan, that I can name the Orioles from like the 1970s, maybe early 80s.
Teams.
I'll add to that when I moved to Arizona in 99, the Diamondbacks went on to the World Series. I ended up because I knew I was involved with ASU, a sport business program. I met the CFO from the Diamondbacks, who and name escapes me right now, who was kind enough to get me tickets to Game 6. And Game 6 was we were sitting in the outfield. In fact, the Sports Illustrated came out like a couple weeks later, a week later, and neighbor came up and said, "You're in there." And there's a picture of Luis Gonzalez rounding second or whatever, or going to second. And you can see us in the outfield. I'm standing up doing this. And my then son, that David, who was in kindergarten, my son Joseph, who's in high school, are sitting there with sad looks on their face. They were Yankee fans.
Right.
How the hell did I grow up in Baltimore and raise two Yankee fans? I have no clue. I mean, David may have an excuse for the older, following his older brother. But Joseph, come on now. The Yankees, Joseph was a big baseball player. He was good. He played a couple of years lacrosse back in Baltimore because I wanted him to. But he was so good in baseball. But he had back in Arizona. In fact, my youngest son, David, was in baseball too out here. Some of the parents were taking it a little too seriously. And I think that's something that happens in a little league these days and in all sports. I remember my son played high school football and it was a freshman team and the same 11 boys were playing offense and defense with another 20 or so sitting on the bench. I was just like, what's going on here? Yeah. And the guy was trying to move up to be a better, a higher level coach, JV or varsity or something. And I think they lost the sight of it. I mean, you talk about community. I moved from Scottsdale to Gilbert. There's much greater sense of community down here. It's one of the things I love about it. I knew the mayor in Scottsdale. I reached out to the mayor in Gilbert on a Friday morning. I was sitting down with her on a Monday at 9 a.m. in her office. They welcome people. It's a supportive community. I think that's something that's missing in youth sports. And I wasn't planning to go there. I'd love to get your perspective on this. I think that, kids need to grow up these days. They need to feel some part of something, whether they're a great athlete like you were, or someone like me who played left out. I mean, seriously, I played left field and I was just praying the ball wouldn't come my way. That was my early prayers. Yeah. Please don't have a ball come my way because I don't know what I'm going to do if it comes my way.
Yeah.
I just wasn't a natural athlete like you were. So
I had to work at it.
I know. No, I'm not questioning that. I could have worked at it and still was, it would be like controlling the equipment in here. I won't figure it out ever. I could focus on it and try to learn it. At the end of the day, there's some things I'm good at. Obviously, getting great guests, hiring a great executive producer, Kelly, and there's other things I'm not good at. So you played for which minor league club?
First of all, I just want to say you were watching my college teammate in center field for that Diamondbacks team. That was Steve Finley.
Oh, yeah.
That was my teammate.
Wow.
And I think he might have been the only big leaguer off that team, off my college team. But he was a freshman when I was a senior. And I was just I'm staying with the minor league coordinator for the Oakland A's while I'm here. We're relationships, right? And I said, I was looking up Steve Finley's statistics. I said, my nephew he didn't have any home runs his first year in college. So it just goes to show you how you can develop, right? But I'm sorry, what was your question?
Well, who'd you play for?
Okay, so from college, and I had to grind it out. I was a walk-on.
Right.
I would have had a scholarship to a great school, but I decided Southern Illinois was it. So I walked on and played with those great players. And I missed getting drafted by one guy with the White Sox. So I was always just a little shy. Right?
Who did you play for, though?
So then I went down to spring training because my coach said, well, go talk to the White Sox because they were going to draft
spring training. Because I'm not
19. Okay,
I'm not familiar with how all this works. I know how the NFL works. I'm more familiar with that. But in baseball, they have open tryouts? How do you get, no, how do
No.
you do it? You have to know
So what
someone?
I had to do what I did again. I had to show up. So I put a little packet together of myself, a few pictures, and my little bio
I
of what I
love it.
did. Right. And I went to the White Sox camp first. And because that's where my coach told me they were going to draft you. And I can't remember if they turned me away at that point. I don't remember, but I ended up at the Mets camp and I saw Bud Harrelson out there.
Okay, I know that.
You know, he
Yeah,
was the 69 Mets shortstop.
yeah.
And so I went up to him at the fence. Let's see, this is a long time ago now. Anyway, I got his attention and I said, I kind of, uh, moved in as a coach on him, right? Because I
Yeah.
was already 22 years old now. And I said, do you think you could give me a few tips? You
Smart.
know? And so he
But
said,
people,
yeah,
my life coach says everyone has an ego. So
yeah. I
serve on
said, can you
that.
give me a few tips? Because I said, I just missed getting drafted and I'm not sure what the next step is. I still have the desire, but I don't have anyone on me. And he said, well, come back. I had to come back 3 days in a row before I got to him. And he said, yeah, come on out. I'm going to work you out
And so did you end up playing for them?
the next year, believe
Okay.
it or not. So he gave me the workout and all he did was hit me grounders and watch my arm strength.
And
And
did
he
you play triple A, double A, what,
just spring training.
spring train? But
But I,
that you were close to your sport. And how did you transition from that into what you did later, which was what, physical therapy, right?
yeah, but it's important to know for your guests what perseverance can do for them. So
Yeah.
I'm just gonna finish
Sure.
the
No,
Mets
absolutely.
story. So he told me you're good enough to play. I'm gonna put your name in with the minor league director, and they'll give you a call. Well, I had to go back. I was already working at the time in physical therapy as an assistant, and they didn't call me. And then I went to Wrigley Field when the Mets were playing. These are the old
I
school
love
guys now.
this.
That's why they were getting on the bus, and I locked eyes with him on the bus. Bud Harrelson. He got off,
And
came over to me
okay.
in the front of the crowd, and he said, did they call you?" And I said, "No." He goes, "Go back again."
I love it.
I got my shot the next year. So Steve Shriver was the minor league director, and he said, "Yeah, buddy talked about you. I remember it. We're going to give you a shot."
Okay.
So then I had to beat out Greg Jeffries, who were the number one pick.
So, but
and
you were there
ended
spring training, but that's an experience very few people get a chance
Yes.
to do. Were you already a physical therapist in terms of schooling or what?
I was a physical therapy assistant. That's what I got my degree in
Assistant.
from Southern Illinois. I was an engineering major for 3 years, and then I changed.
But my
So
daughter, when she was 15 on, my daughter Maggie heads up the physical therapy department for a hospital back in Richmond, Virginia. She knew from the time she was 15 on, that's what she wanted to do, be a physical therapist. It's become something that you now need a doctorate to do it.
yes, I have
What
a
do you,
bachelor's degree.
okay, well, what do you
Gotcha.
like about doing physical therapy? Because you're serving people in that capacity.
Yeah. So the transition was the Mets let me go, and the way they let me go, he goes, "You're good enough to play here, but you're not as good as Jeffries," and he made
Right.
the major leagues.
Right.
So I was thinking, what's the next step? And I remember being in the Tampa airport, and I was like, I prayed to the Lord. I said, "Lord, if if this isn't meant to be, set my spirit free." And someone came up to me and they said, "God just sent me over. God just sent me over to give you this." And it was a book of Proverbs. And I told her, I said, I just got let go from the Mets. And she says, "Oh, a career in physical therapy will be much more rewarding." That was a critical moment. And so that was my spirit being set free.
I love it. Yeah.
23 years old. And that's
The book
all
of
that's all I
Proverbs.
ever wanted to
I
be.
need to read the book of Proverbs is something that our last guest, Arnie Fonseca, it made a difference in his life. It's probably the most accessible part of the Bible for people that don't know, because a lot of people don't know. We want to bring, and again, I want to set the bar. I mean, we're talking about all types of faiths here. We're talking to people like yourself that your belief in something higher than yourself, bigger than yourself, which I think is so needed these days, guides you. I'm Christian. It's Jesus all the way. God has opened more doors for me, candidly, because I don't get my own way as much anymore. Is what comes
Yeah.
down to, and I'll listen to him above the advice of other people, because at the end of the day, that's what you have to go with. And even if you're not a believer, if you do what's right, I was explaining this to my youngest son about something. If you do what's right, you can sleep at night. You may lose family members over it. You may be laughed at. You can deal with all that stuff. Yeah, like the quote the list of quotes I gave the girl downstairs that was at the front desk of our coworking space, Mother Teresa. People will think you're doing things for ulterior motives. There's nothing I hate in the world more than hearing that. Oh, you have an ulterior motive, and that's questioning my sincerity. I've had just recently a GM from a health club saying, "Yeah, your emails are a little too much. Yeah, yeah, you're complimenting me. As if I'm not sincere. You, at 23 years old, you figured it out. It took me another 30 some plus. And I want to touch upon something because you were raised Catholic and you're a big Catholic, right? And my
But I was
friend,
a Protestant missionary.
really, I want to hear about that. But I want to first address something because I raised my three children Catholic, and I apologize to them to this day because of one thing: Catholic guilt. And my youngest son got his confirmation. You go in, and that's when you go in and meet with the priest, right? One on
Right,
one.
right.
For the first time, he came out with the look of guilt on his face. I'm like, yeah, he was 7, maybe 8 the most, maybe even younger, probably 7 or 8. What's a 7 or 8 year old feel? Why does he have to feel guilt? Why is a Catholic faith guilt is a part of it? Let's face it. Why, in your opinion? And I'm not talking doctrine because I'm not looking for that type of discussion here in this podcast. That's what we're not about. But one of the best things a good friend of mine, Giselle, got me over a few years ago was, Michael, worrying is a sin. And it is. And guilt and worry pretty much go hand in hand, in my opinion. So I'll put you on the spot, Catholic guilt. What's the story on that?
You are putting me on the spot. I didn't think we were going to talk about this one.
Yeah,
Okay.
well,
So
we have to have some hooks. Get some listeners.
Well, I'll start with what the Protestants taught me on the trip was that you had I think there's the 4 spiritual laws, that sin separates us from God, God's cross forgives our sins, and I'm not, these are the Campus Crusade for Christ 4 spiritual laws. So God forgives our sins and then renews us through a relationship with him, and then we're saved. I think that's something along that line. It's so long ago now. So you would, most of the time you wouldn't know that the Protestant and the Catholic teachings on salvation aren't that far apart. It's just a misconception. The Catholic Church doesn't teach that you can earn your way to heaven.
No.
It teaches that, first of all, that there's no way to become. There's no way to heaven but through the Lord Jesus.
Right.
All
you need to do is believe.
That's correct. And at the
A
moment,
lot of people don't know that.
And at
A
the
lot of people
moment of
don't know
death, the church teaches that God will give you that choice. He'll, even to the Muslim, that you'll have your chance to decide. Mm-hmm. So like the thief on the cross, right? Bring me into remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Christ said, you will be with me this day in paradise. As far as the guilt is concerned, if we go to the scriptures and we go to 1 John, it talks about the 2 types of sin. There's the venial and the mortal. And I can't give you the exact verse, but a venial sin would be like telling someone a lie, right? Okay, or maybe stealing a piece of candy from your mother's jar, right? A mortal sin is a sin that it's really affecting someone else's life so negatively that you're injuring them. So in other words, abortion. The Catholic Church teaches that's a mortal sin because you're killing a potential healthy child in the womb, someone that's going to come into the world. When I go to the pro-life movements, I just tell them, weren't you once a fetus? Yeah. A fetus becomes a child, and you had a chance to become that child. So the Catholic Church would say, no, if you do that and you know you do it and you do it willfully, You may not go to heaven. I don't know. They don't know,
Yeah.
but God, the church teaches that you may lose your salvation.
I
So and there's other.
I could touch on briefly because I think listeners need to know.
Let me just say one more thing.
Go ahead.
To finish the thought. So in that first John, it talks about, if you love me, you will keep my commandments.
Okay.
Okay. Those are the 10 commandments Moses gave us in the desert, right?
Right.
Honor thy mother and father, keeps holy the Sabbath. So Jesus is saying, you do not know me if you do not keep the commandments. But we know Jesus, right? But maybe you don't know him at that level of heaven.
Yeah.
Because the Catholic Church teaches you have to be almost perfect to get into heaven. Now,
that's where I have issues. Okay. I mean, I do, because who the fuck is perfect these days? Seriously, I know I say that word way too much, but it's a word he created too. But who's perfect these days, Dan?
no one.
No one is perfect. God is perfect. Jesus is perfect. I'm as flawed as anyone out there. Literally, I get in, a girl that I really care about, I did some really crappy things. And I did it for, in my mind, good reasons. But you just said something that made me rethink some things in terms of how I hurt her and in her mind, how she views it, because we've been talking again. And at the end of the day, trying to get to be perfect, come on.
Well, there's
I just want to wake up and be able to sell something
you know
today.
What, you know what makes you perfect?
What?
Your suffering. Because the closer you get, Padre Pio used to say, if you knew the value of suffering, you would pray for more, because Christ suffered on the cross.
Once again, that's not going to bring people into faith. Here's my issue today. My issue today is you have extremes. You have extremes. You have churches that do, I call them gospel churches, where people, it's all fun and games and brings people in. You have there's a church in North Scottsdale that does this, and they have a passion pastor that really rallies the troops. The music's incredible, and it's a feel good church. Then you go down the street to St. Patrick's. I love Father Eric there. In fact, I went to St. Patrick's when I first moved out here because I was married at the time. My friend's best friends were members there, and he was Jewish. He is Jewish. He's a Jewish doctor, but his wife's Catholic, and they raised their kids Catholic. And I went and I did confession once with Father Eric. I want people to believe in something, and I think less and less people are believing these days. Right? Am I right or wrong?
Totally.
Yeah. So it's almost like, okay, I call myself a gold-worded Republican. I believe we need to be fiscally conservative, but I believe politics should not be in the bedroom. Okay, I don't want to get into an abortion debate because I am pro-life, but I also think Reagan made a big mistake embracing the religious right and getting involved with the Republican Party. And now we're so divided that the Democrats are beating us every time in this state because they go down to ASU, which is the largest school in the country, and they recruit people to be Democrats, recruit students. You know what the Republicans are focused on? Counting votes. Literally, I signed up to work the election. I got a phone call that morning for the primary. I said, I'm sorry, I have meetings. I literally got chewed out later in the afternoon and said, why'd you walk away from your position? I didn't walk away from anything. We're a divided country. I want to see people come together, because you shouldn't lose friendships over who you voted for or the fact that I go to church. Best compliment I ever got was from an atheist friend, a devout atheist, who said, "You're not like most Christians." What do you mean by that? She goes, "Well, you're not judgmental." And isn't Jesus all about love, loving everyone?
I was just going to say what I meant by perfect is your love has to become more perfect, your forgiveness. So God can read your heart at any moment, but you definitely get read at the moment of death, what you've done in your life, how you forgave people, how you loved. I think God's going to say, how did you love with the life I've given you? That's what I think he's going to judge on. Now, if you read the Catholic Bible, you're going to read 8 books in there that the Protestant book doesn't have. And guess what? They're all about Israel. You cannot understand the Palestinian-Israel situation without knowing those books, because they're all about the kingdoms that try to conquer Israel. Persia, Book of Judith is about the Syrians. then the book of Maccabees 1 and 2 are all about the Israeli wars. They continually tried to conquer them. You know who the friends of the Jews were? The Spartans, the Romans.
Wow.
Initially,
I didn't know that.
yeah, they took their side and they always protected them. Now, where it went wrong, I don't know in history there in Jesus's day, right? They were at odds, sort of, even
Right.
though they lived together. But yeah, the Romans, they made pacts with them. Could you come and help us if this kingdom comes against us? And they did.
Wow.
See, that's why, there were some Palestinian protesters outside the city where I lived the other day. And I'm from a military family. I lost a cousin to a roadside bomb in Iraq.
Oh,
I didn't just sit there. I told them, you guys need to get a Bible and read the books of the Apocrypha so you know what the Jews have been through and the nation of Israel. Oh, we don't believe in the Bible. Well, there you go. You just said that. No one believes in their faith. They're separated from it now as a nation, like we are. And I said, well, you're not going to understand what you're even protesting if you don't know the history, right? Because that nation has to protect themselves from every kingdom that's ever come against them. And look at World War II, right?
yeah.
So, and I'm not saying that they are killing innocent Palestinians, right? That's not a great
That's a
thing.
horrible thing.
But man, if there were 50, I told them if 1,500 rockets were coming into Ashland, Oregon every day, would you do something about it?
Yeah. No,
I don't know
no,
how. I think I went off track there.
No. And this podcast goes in free form, and there's other things that people are gonna have to. We're gonna have you back to talk about Mother Teresa. You've met Mother Teresa. You've seen the Virgin Mary in Yugoslavia, but I want to get to something that is you now, because at the end of the day, you're not in Arizona to be part of this podcast. You're in Arizona to sell something, and it's something you developed. And I want you talking about that because this is a passion project for you.
Well,
You have everything in this, right?
well, not anymore.
Wait, stop that.
I
Stop.
did at one
You know
time.
what? I started this. My friend Ed Sanders says all the time, yeah, 7 years later, you got your medical company going. I walked away from a partnership because the partner had problems with my past. He didn't have problems with my past for like a year and a half. I was ready to sign the documentation to make it a partnership. We'd been working together. I was all in on this. And he said, can you just not mention my name? I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, people are calling my office saying you did this in your past. I said, well, I did. I made mistakes before. And he goes, well, yeah, but just don't associate with me. I can't really think it was a fiance of his or something that may said something. I don't know. At the end of the day, that's his business and his story. I know my story was I could have made millions of dollars back in 2018 by signing a document. But I reached out to people like Jimmy Walker and Ed Sandage and other people, Arnie Fonseca, Bill Allard, my true best mentor ever, guy I worked for on a big sports agency, ProServe. And they all said the same thing, walk away. And I walked away and I had to take a job. And God, at that time, I had to take a job. I finally got a job, $25 an hour. Back to the beginning of the podcast, I wasn't making living wage. And I've been there. I've been there where there's not that money in the bank account. I may be there now because I'm all in on this, but you know what? I don't care because I know I'm on the right track now. And I'm listening to him and he will provide. And you're down here. You drove 3 days. You drove 3 days because of this project, this product. Tell me about the product. Give you have a 60-second. We don't sell sponsorships. So we should start because that'd be revenue for us.
60 seconds to talk about 30 years.
Yeah. Well, pare it down to like 3 minutes. What is it? What is a product and why should people be interested in this? Because it's important.
Well, first of all, God gives you a mission in life, right? You got to figure that out and you got to go for it. That's what we're here for. We got a mission. Well, my mission has always been, I believe that I played with athletes in action to form a team for the Catholic faith because the Catholics don't know their faith, right? So
you're right.
We got to get to them somehow, and I'm the right guy. So that was number one. And number two was I got into physical therapy to do pediatrics, and I never did. And the kids were always my passion. So when I was a missionary, I saw the poverty in South America, and I told the Lord there, if I ever come into money, I will build your orphanages. I'll come back and get these kids. I've made that promise. So that's the mission. this other is the vehicle to get there. So, I was an engineering major, and when I was doing physical therapy for Oakland, I understood the core probably before anyone did. You know why? Because
Yeah.
I have the trademark, the ab and back core trainer.
Oh, wow.
No one can use that. It's like Coca-Cola's trademark, right?
Yeah.
And I had that before people really even knew what it was. And there was one guy that gave me the idea in 1990. Anyway, I started on that project in 94. This tells you how everything's kind of taken a long time.
It does.
My original patent ran out. And then other people have kind of saw what I did and they've gone off of that, but they've no one's ever really copied my idea. I've had my core trainer in 5 major league locker rooms.
So what exactly is it?
It's a standing core trainer, how you hit a baseball or a golf ball or a
That's
tennis
huge.
ball. Yeah.
That is the number one thing that a baseball player needs to go to the next level.
That's
as a youth player.
They need the core training. And this, as Jim Lefevre tells me, you've got the training device. I just never had the capital to completely explode.
Well, money follows good ideas.
And I sold one of the White Sox, and I just saw the strength coach before I came here. I went over to his facility
for the White
Alan
Sox.
Thomas. He used to be a strength coach for like 18 years, and Jim Thome was my biggest endorser from the White Sox. Hall of Famer. So it was there for 4 years, and then it had some mechanical issues. Well, I didn't have anything to make it, to get there and bring it everywhere, so it hasn't really been in action since then. But I got to the next level and built the next model, which was the health club model. So I got new patents. Even I have patents on the product.
Have you reached out to like Lifetime Fitness, which is a
great
organization?
I did in La Jolla.
Not La Jolla. You need to go. Arnie Fonseca, our last guest on the podcast, used to work out in the 70s or early 80s or late 70s with the founder of Lifetime Fitness. So I'm going to connect you with Arnie Fonseca. I'm putting Arnie on the spot here now. But between the three of us, we're going to figure out how to get to Lifetime's Fitness CEO. And his brother lives in town. I just found out. This is God. Just the other day, I'm so focused on the medical that I won't go and do other things like networking events and stuff like that because I need to be focused on this. We're in the wound care business. There's a lot to learn. We're in the CBD, direct to physical therapists and other people like that. In fact, I'll give you some samples of that before we leave. But I don't have time for anything else. But pickleball is my passion. So I was invited by a guy, Brett Warner, who's 45th in the world in singles pickleball. They're building the world's premier and largest pickleball facility in Scottsdale, right next to Talking Stick. It just so happens that the land they're building it on is owned by a company, Caliber, that I had office space with in 2010 when they first launched. I'm telling you all this because there's some logic to my telling you this, but at the end of the day, I'm focused, but there's different connections we get. And I think it's our responsibility to help other people. Again, I keep quoting a friend of mine, Ed. Ed always quotes Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar's famous quote: "You help enough people get what they want, you get what you want." And I truly believe, you shouldn't be looking for anything in return ever. And I've gotten to the point now, a friend has a sports agency who's hesitant to reconnect with me because we'd be competing oftentimes. I was like, no, I'm out of that business. Here's a lead for you. Here's a lead for you. Just update me on what's going on, be nice. But at the end of the day, I want to help you get what you want because God will provide for me. And so we're going to get you into Lifetime Fitness at the top level. And I'm going to at least reach out to one person that is very connected in baseball, has made a ton of money in baseball. He lives on the West Coast in Newport Beach. And I think he does a lot of business in China the last time I talked to him. And I think he's the type of person that may see the value in this. You're going to get into some shark moments, the Shark Tank type of thing where people are going to try to come in and buy your thing and give you a small equity stake. Please keep me in the loop. Anything I can do behind the scenes to help you negotiate, I'll do. But you're coming down here today and being our first in-studio guest, that touches me. especially when my friend from North Phoenix wouldn't drive this far.
And I'm also here. I have my second product. That's what I'm doing here.
What's your second
My
product?
second product is a pulley system that goes on the fence, travels with you, and it does everything that you need: warm up, strengthening on the field. I just came from ASU. I'm going back there tomorrow. The pitching coach liked it when he was at San Diego State. So that is I've done a second product, and that one was a lot quicker than the core trainer.
Well, you know, I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. I think I told you. I wore Ravens shirt just because I didn't have time to change in my last podcast. Lamar Jackson doesn't do endorsements, but he has a friend that he basically did a demo for his exercise equipment. Getting someone like Lamar, who's a big God believer. The thing I love about the Ravens, a few different things, you know, they let everyone be themselves. But John Harbaugh, every press conference, their coach, head coach says, give thanks above first.
Yeah.
And Lamar is all about the other people. Lamar, he's such a good person. Yeah, I love the story where he knew everyone's name in the facility the first month he was there as a rookie. That's called good parenting. His mom was a good influence on him. Someone taught him that. But also the fact that, you know, they were trying to do a T-shirt because Harbaugh has a saying, that's our quarterback or that's my quarterback, which was all about Lamar. He said he didn't want anything of it. He's boycotting it. I think helping other people is what we're here on earth to do. And if you do that, God will look after you. And you're a person that's helped so many people, Dan. It's about time people help you.
Well, I have tons of relationships in the game, and I was just telling this with Gil last night. I'm staying in his hotel room with this. It's not that much bigger than this place, you know. And he said, "How many days do you need?" I said, "Well, 5." He goes, "Done." I mean, these are the old school guys. I showed up at the Dodger camp the other day, and they said, "Do you have an appointment?" And I said, "No, but I know Rick Honeycutt, and I know the two strength coaches." And they said, "Well, unfortunately, they're in Korea." So,
well, it's a global sport.
But I text Rick Honeycutt, and he got right back to me within 30 minutes.
I did business with the Korean baseball organization. It's funny you mentioned that. Back in the highest position I held at the sports agency as pro serve at the time, got acquired by a company called SFX, was VP of Global Business Development. Unfortunately, they gave someone else the title of VP Business Development right afterwards too, but whatever. At the end of the day, one of the deals I did was there was a person I called on at Samsung whose wife or husband was involved with the KBO, Korean Baseball Organization. And I love dealing with them because the Korean business person does business on two principles. Do you know what they are? Transparency and honesty. And so if you deal with people on an international basis, if you deal with Japanese, you'll never know where you stand because they keep their cards close to their chest. KBO was great. I'd sum up with the people that we handled the broadcast for NBC at that time. And we also did Little League Baseball too, we were involved with. So these are all relationships that come back into the fold here. At the end of the day, I want to help wherever I can. I want you to give one message to people out there that you're Catholic. Why should someone go to a Catholic service? And what do you love most about the Catholic religion? There's some things I love about it, but I want to hear from you.
Well, first of all, I don't judge anyone for what other faith they are because in the end, it's all about your actions.
Yeah.
You know, do you love someone? Do you not judge them? Do you try to help them without wanting something in return? That's true friendship. Mm-hmm. You don't need anything. You're doing it because you love them, not because you need something from them.
Right.
And those are the kinds of friends I have in the baseball world.
That's great.
They're all older. They're not the newer kids.
That's okay.
You know, but I would say, don't judge the Catholic Church by the negative that's out there, the priests that,
right.
You know, the priest scandal with the kids. I hate that part of it. But
it's such a small part of it, but it gets all the press.
Right? Yeah. Right. The thing is, okay, and I'm just going to quote, this came to mind right now. I always kind of go with what the Holy Spirit, I think, is putting in my mind, is Reverend Bishop Fulton Sheen. And I just want to say one more thing about my experience in Kentucky with the Catholic school coaching just recently. Bishop Fulton Sheen, who's like a Billy Graham of the Catholic faith, used to say, uh, what came first, the church or the Bible? Well, he said the traditions of the church were all there before the Bible came about.
Yeah.
All the traditions were
I
there.
know.
So he said the Gospels came out of the church.
Yeah.
And if you read what First Timothy 3:15 says, it says that if I'm delayed, know that the pillar and foundation of truth is the church, not the Bible. The Bible came out of the church. Now, wait a minute. Let me finish.
No, it's making my friend John Powers. It's making sense. Go on.
Let me finish here. So, but we go to the Bible because we're listening to how the Holy Spirit is communicating to us from God's word, right? It's for everyone. But someone has to guide that from the very start. And Christ started that with his apostles. So it's an apostolic church, right? Comes from the Catholic bishops, the apostles, which became the bishops. And I would say this, the first Bible was written by the monks in handwriting in Latin. St. Jerome gave us the first Bible. So in order to look at the Bible in its fullness, look at where it came from and just be open to it. It doesn't mean you got to accept everything or, like you had a bad experience. Well, go to God in your own way. God communicates to us in all different ways. But for me, after my experience with Mary in Medjugorje, I didn't see her, but I looked at the sun for 45 minutes and it didn't hurt my eyes. And I saw the cross spin on the mountain. Wow. Those were convincers. My rosary turned gold. Yeah. I would say the church, the Catholic Church, has a lot of signs. Saints that have never decayed. Yeah. Padre Pio, you can go look at him in the casket. St. Catherine of Labouré died in the 1800s. You can go see her in the casket. Wow. St. Bernadette. There's a lot of signs other than God speaking in the scriptures. So be open to those things. Learn about them. Decide for yourself. But why are they there? Why does Satan hate the Mass? Why does the satanic people want that Eucharist? Because they see something in it.
You're right.
And so there's signs there, and it's mystical.
I'm a big believer in signs.
You can't understand the signs sometimes, right? But they're there. And God speaks to us all in our own way. But there's a mysticism about the Catholic Church that if you don't look into it, you're going to miss it.
Well, you've opened my mind. You've opened my mind today. And, I'm going to honor my mother in heaven by going to a Catholic service on Easter. Or maybe Good Friday. This has been every podcast delivers different things. No, this is my favorite so far, and I've had some great, insults to anyone that's been on. We love you all, but this has been fantastic. You've opened my mind and opened my eyes to things. I do want to have you back on down the road. And it's going to be to celebrate the success that you're going to have with this. I just know in my heart that your heart's into something. And you're at the point now where you're starting to question it.
Yeah. It's 30 years.
Yeah, well, screw that. You know how old Colonel we're told this all the time. I tell people, hey, I'm my third try being an entrepreneur, and they're like, hey, Colonel Sanders became one at 65, and he didn't do bad for himself. So we have shorter runways. There's no doubt about that. Age is real. But at the end of the day,
I guess I could conclude with this with you if you have to conclude. It's not about me. It's about the mission. It's only funding the mission.
Always.
I don't desire to be wealthy.
I do.
I just desire to help other people with that.
I want God, please hear me out. You know what my bank account says right now. Seriously, please. It's all your money. It's all his money.
We're stewards.
And I'm using his money for good. And that doesn't mean I can't take care of myself, because providing for yourself is important. It doesn't mean I can't take care of a special woman in my life and give her the things that she deserves. But I want to leave a legacy. My kids are going to find out at some point, but they're happy, they're successful, they're partnered up with the best people in the world, and they have their lives. My legacy is going to be through people, through helping our executive producer be what she is already, the best podcaster in the world, executive producer in the world, but also help other people get into it. That's what I wanted to do, and I just decided that recently. But I need a lot of money to do that. I mean, you may like the movie or hate the movie Wolf of Wall Street, but Jordan Belfort says something smart in the beginning. He basically says, "You want to save the owl, make some money so you can save the owl." There's nothing wrong with that. It's all his money anyway.
All right.
So again, I want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate you coming over here. And when are you heading back?
I have to head back tomorrow. 3-day drive.
Get some sleep. Hey, if you want to call me on your ride back, we can have some conversations over the weekend. I'm happy to do that. But Dan, thank you.
Nothing's done without showing up, right?
No, you showed up, and I appreciate you showing up here.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you, because who knows who is going to get touched from it, right, or helped.
Well, that's what we're all about. Podcast is out there not to sell anyone anything, but to bring people into maybe connecting and hearing something about a higher power that other than yourself. So until next time, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the FaithIQ podcast with Michael Benson, exploring lives enriched by faith. Please like and subscribe to the show on your favorite listening platform and give us a 5-star rating and review. Follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook at FaithIQ Podcast, and watch each episode on YouTube at FaithIQ Podcast.